doesn't always shield you. What would tell us what you did in her position? She sat in the comments area below, upright back with a ruler-like alignment, and Brenda Gregory didn't slouch in seat 1A. Not at interviews, but in boardrooms, and not in first class for sure. She wore a navy blue lapel pin that was gold-plated. Every time she turned, the blazer shimmered. Her head background is written in a proud, clear script, a personalized present from her helper. The moment her business made its first 10, she had chuckled when she was given $1 million. She got it. But she's wearing it like, so this wasn't your typical excursion to New York, was the destination she was on. Getting ready to seal the transaction that would secure a transaction that will define her company's legacy, putting her in a league that is often reserved for white, suit-wearing guys who talked and sat on boards for buzzwords and fun. She was 47, black, intelligent, and unconcerned up till now. It began with in a kind, courteous tone, "Pardon me, ma'am. I apologize for disturbing you, Brenda." Looked up from the hovering finger on her iPad. Over the bullet points that are underlined in the flight attendant's investor pitch was Caucasian, under 25, and had a tense grin that twisted too tightly. At the edges, there has been some confusion shot on. "Are you open to switching seats with a different traveler? It's just, he has some mobility requirements. Thus it would truly assist us." The words were selected and meticulously practiced. Even Brenda could still make out anything about they didn't sit properly, and she needed movement. Inquired gently, squinting with courteous. The attendant paused out of curiosity. An eye towards the first S is back. "He simply wants a window seat in the cabin, and I purchased this window seat for you." Brenda cut in without raising her voice. "No heat, just the truth. 6 months ago. Through the airline, which offers a full refund, upgraded fare, and I can relate to the woman." "I apologize," I said, fast and again. "He is a VIP with one of our airlines. We just assumed that platinum elite travelers." Brenda could have put her down there, had she heard the tone previously. When she possessed the degrees and titles influence, the tone was the same as before, questioned her about her sense of belonging. At Mercer's executive dining room, the same holdings that inquired as to if her before scheduling, the assistant received approval. Brenda's presence at a prominent panel, a sufficiently gentle tone of supposition. She was certainly forceful enough to sting. Glanced beyond the rows of people down the aisle. Leather briefcases and pressed collar still, she looked at him in her mid-60s, standing with beautifully groomed white silver hair with a sense of entitlement. 1D he didn't check. He didn't need to. That's done. Brenda took a big breath. The lessons she learnt from her therapist, gave a single nod and stood calmly. "Of course," she responded with precision. "Let me gather my belongings." "Oh, I'm very grateful." The attendant let out a sigh of relief. "Don't forget to bring something extra." "For your concern," Brenda did not reply. She took her iPad and slipped it inside her purse, water bottle from the holder on the armrest, and put her boarding pass back in her pocket. Her body moved automatically, although her thoughts were thundering. Though the stroll to 5C seemed to go on forever. Those unfamiliar with her didn't notice truly consider her to be just another lady and coach. Another passenger of color is going to make someone else. She sat down gently now, feeling at ease, concealed by a curtain that is tucked into a smaller seat amid the parched coughs and economy crinkling snack wraps. The irony didn't escape her in class. Building has been the focus of my whole career. Access the restrooms while seated at the table. However, she was reduced in size, and made a man across the aisle vanish, examined her and remarked nothing, although she did open her iPad once more. The rationale faded in as the numbers became hazy. The recollection of her arose in its place. Grandmother's voice prevents them from making, "You hear me not after. Brenda, you little one." She closed her because of everything we've gone through. The pressure behind their eyelids scorched. 5 minutes went by, then 10, and finally Brenda, relocated once more, but not 2. She got up to make room for someone else. Retrieved her phone from her backpack and moved slowly in the direction towards the front of the fly over the inquisitive looks beyond the classroom and the half curtains. Lines, but instead of yelling, She wasn't going to beg. Instead, she would do what she did best and deal with it similarly. The attendant greeted her in shock. Mayor Brenda's face displayed a single, "I want to talk to your commander," finger, as well as your area manager, and while you're at it. But I need the man's name. The attendant, now seated in 1A, blinked. There will be an issue if I don't receive responses in the next 3 minutes. The Brenda's voice had such a piercing authority, so unyielding that the man in 1A's position altered behind her, was looking over now, along with 2 other first-class guests tilted their phones, raised eyebrows, and somewhere in the behind. The aircraft a young lady in. She had just launched her camera app on her glasses. I hit the record button. The initial domino had simply Brenda Gregory had collapsed and was finished being. The flight attendant returned courteously. A few seconds later, with a fresh rigidity in her step, and another older woman in tow, sporting a blazer that made a concerted effort to seem. Importantly, Evan Tran was written on her name tag. Brenda, the regional service manager, didn't leave her position with her arms crossed, with a certain poise in front of her. Nevertheless, I've dealt with worse you won't find courtrooms and boardrooms shock. Me with procedure and turbulence. I am aware, Miss Gregory, that there has been a misinterpreting Evan's tone, brave but practiced. Brenda cocked her head. Head misunderstanding suggests that this was Evan looked at the aeroplane and saw an accident. The attendant next to her, who unexpectedly discovered a lot of curiosity about her clipboard. We would want to present you with a coupon to make up for the trouble, Evan said, holding out a white envelope. That's a big credit, $750. Besides, we'll reimburse your. Brenda didn't even look at the upgrading charge. At the envelope. I still have that man in my seat. Evan did say it more slowly now. But as I recognized that you agreed to relocate, no, Brandon clarified that I felt under pressure to proceed on the presumption that the airline gave someone else's precedence over the reservation I paid for now. There was silence behind them. Very subtle yet noticeable change that occurs when individuals begin to pay attention, without glancing at adjacent passengers. Give up acting like you read their newspapers or emails and begin paying close attention. Brenda was fully aware that it was the same. She used to feel different at board meetings. When she uttered what no one else had said, Evan folded her when she had the guts to say it out loud. Hands. Miss Gregory, we recognize the individual in question is frustrated, an elite platinum member who has flown with us for more than 2 decades, and I'm Globe Strategies CEO and founder. Brenda answered in a silky voice, which has nearly taken your airline to A4 million reservations for travel this fiscal year. Your system flagged that in just 1 year. Evan's gaze wavered. She hadn't looked. After letting it land, Brenda said, I'm interested in your coupons. I'm curious about responsibility, and would want to understand why a white man's inclination was given precedence over a black woman's salary reservation, and the reason no one noticed any issues. Until I got up. There was silence. Nor even the flight attendant followed. Evan ventured to write on her pad, cleared her throat, saying, I must speak. Brendan, the captain, delivered a brief, I'll wait right here, not good. It wasn't. Many years before the pilot himself showed up, a height maybe in his mid-4s with a trimmed beard and someone's composed mannerised to soaring through his name tag said, Captain Storms. Harris, and in contrast to everyone else, he didn't talk immediately. And he listened. I heard concerns have been raised regarding seat assignment. Gently he muttered, and Brenda turned to face him. Captain, I was taken out of seat 1A after paying 6 months' worth of full farenly because another traveler I moved without a seat because I enjoyed it, making a fuss, but I'm now requesting this needs to be fixed before we depart the gate. He nodded after hearing that. Captain swiftly interrupted Fair Evan. We've already changed, and we're attempting to prevent a more serious problem with all. With all due respect, he interrupts a passenger, paid for the seat, hence it belongs to them. Not Brenda, who is negotiable, arched an eyebrow. At last, she believed the captain had walked. The elder man's statements in 1A were silently exchanged. The man glanced, his mouth tightened into a displeased line, but in the end, he refused to apologize. Not even a sidelong glance at Brenda. Brenda didn't require it. So she returned to. Her heels are calm and proud, thundering softly in the background on the first. She sank into 1A on the classroom floor. Leather greeted her like if she were an old friend. Buddy, who strapped her and crossed her legs. Belt, and this. Time opened her iPad. The world had written itself with concentration. By 1 inch. But that inch mattered. A quiet voice cut her off. She searched for a young man in her thoughts. Lady in her mid-20s with large brown eyes, and she had her phone hanging over her anxious energy. A little elevated, I hope, but she believed that what happened previously was recorded. People must view it as you do. Dealt with it. That was strong. Brendan blinked and you captured it. The young lady gave a little nod. As you got up, I saw things like happened previously, but nobody ever mentions. Regardless of what you did, Brenda studied her for paused, then delivered a brief Lucille Reyes. What is your name? If you're going to share it, Reyes, first give it to me. I might want to mention something lit up in my own Lucia. She nodded enthusiastically and went back to her seat. 15 minutes after that, the plane took off. Brenda's back leaned back a little as the aircraft rose, but her thoughts remained based on reasoning. Her intention was not to create a commotion. She didn't do that, but there were indisputable times when the risk of quiet was greater than the consequences of raising their voices as they arrived. A JFK checked her email and texts, had begun humming, and Lucia had 48-second footage without names was posted, said there was only a black woman standing tall, plainly speaking and inquiring as to why at 32,000 views before Brenda received it was at her town vehicle. She hadn't said much in the 110,000 video, but people didn't care, were not anticipating a speech. Instead, they were observing for the moment. Someone who resembled them declined to. Debbie shrank and gazed out the window at the distant rise of the metropolitan skyline. Tomorrow she had meetings, figures to examine, but something more profound had only just started, and it wasn't. She was unaware that it was simply business, but her name would be in tomorrow's headlines. Then they would finally understand the entire tale. The next day at lunchtime, Brenda Gregory's. It was weird to see faces everywhere, almost like witnessing another person's life. She sat in her hotel, a version of her existence. Phone in hand in the main area of the suite, looking over the headlines that arrived more quickly than she could update. The Black CEO challenges the airline for its discriminatory practices. Brenda Gregory is adamant about motivates millions. She was worthy of her throne. Popular Lucia's video has gone viral across the country. Micro picked it up overnight. Influencers, followed by morning performances, Brenda's forceful yet quiet approach to mainstream media resistance had taken on symbolic meaning, and she, regardless of her desire to do so, she was now at the focal point of a much bigger. Compared to her, Nana, her helper, was already, from the conference location, sending an SMS people who are out of breath constantly stopping me to inquire as to whether I'm with Brenda Gregory. You've become a legend. But Brenda wasn't. Yes. It was fortunate that she didn't pursue the attention she desired and the outcomes she desired. Change, advancement, and the reason she established first and foremost. Globe Strategies was to provide seats for others like her, equitable without needing to provide justification for their. Her phone buzzed and she deserved to be there. Once more, it was Rachel's small. Typically, sister didn't text throughout business hours, but the fact that she did it signified something that pride cannot even begin to explain. When you breathe, Brenda. It calls me. Grinned gently before gazing out the window. It shimmered at the Manhattan skyline, under the solid late morning light, unconcerned, just like she felt when she entered meetings in which she was the room's sole black lady, or when her first $1 million was earned when guys were in. When she gave her startup pitch, Suits laughed, put on her blue jacket once more. The same one from today's flight was to propose a merger or acquisition that would turn Globe into one of the most potent minority-owned advisory firms in the nation. She refused to allow a viral film to divert her attention from it. Moment she entered the executive boardroom at the room was still unoccupied around 12:30 p.m. Due to her tardiness, She was constantly exactly on schedule. However, due to her now, eyes were following from outside the room, whispered to herself as she pushed out of her chair. Like a mild static hum, one of the red tie, white, late 50s, and investors are presented. She sat miss with a too wide smile. I saw the video last night. Gregory, things were greatly shaken up by churning things. Don't flinch, Brendan. I'm here to chat. Let's keep focused, business. He glanced temporarily reprimanded good thee. When the presentation began, she was perfect. Clearly aggressive, numerically based, and approach, her captivating presence sort that was impossible to overlook, even by people who want to make her a headline or a period of popular indignation. But midway through her global slide, the door opens for retention analytics. A woman discreetly came in with a message. He read to the lead partner at the table. It gave a little nod before glancing up at Brenda. We recently received Gregory. The corporate VP of Public Relations for the Airline A meeting is being requested by relations with you in private within this structure. Brenda didn't move her face while my pitch. They have stated that it is urgent. Maybe. She didn't let the pressure from the media to. She had a terrible experience with the insult land. Diversions. I'll complete my proposal, she said. I'll determine if I'm available after that. And she completed her close 25 minutes later. Slide struck so precisely that there was no space for discussion of Globe's idea. Simply put, it was groundbreaking. Brenda might perceive their desired expressions. She stood in front of a sign that afternoon. Thank you for your time, she said, assembling. I'll be in my suite with her tablet if you possess any. She didn't wait for them to ask inquiries. Reply. 10 minutes later, the airline representative was in the mezzanine, waiting for her. Brenda entered the level meeting room. Slowly shutting the door after her, a tall white blonde woman stood. And I'm Eliza Montgomery, and she held out her hand. Sterling Ayres, VP of PR. Thank you for. When she saw me, Brenda glanced at the extended hand and gave it a quick shake. Ms. Montgomery, I'm sure Elizabeth ceded after giving me an uneasy grin. I assume that the reason I'm here isn't regarding the PR's frequent flyer miles. The executive laughed excessively. Although it's regarding the video and the circumstances on the flight, Brenda just watched without saying anything. Elizabeth cleared her throat, saying, We would want to. I sincerely apologize on behalf of what transpired with Sterling Ayres. Was unacceptable. We're going over the procedures, and we want to work together on a joint assertion. Brenda folded her hands and explained why. Elizabeth repeated, perplexed. How would you desire a joint statement? Brenda questioned her once again. Tone cool to manage the story. Soften the, to demonstrate solidarity. Blow. Elizabeth blinked. And if you don't mind, we could like to investigate a characteristic of a brand alliance. Participate in a campaign that showcases strong black business owners. We think it would be advantageous to both parties there. It was Brenda reclined in her seat, allowing me to question. For you, Ms. Montgomery, if Lucia, that footage wasn't filmed by Reyes, if it was simply my word against yours, would airlines be present at this moment? Because it's difficult to say no. Elizabeth hesitated. Standing, Brenda replied, It's not her. Took her phone off the table, although I'm not. I would like to serve as your PR solution. Want to ensure that no black lady is ever asked to vacate her seat. You want a genuine partnership fix once more. Your policies make your data public, therefore fire those who believed it was appropriate. To make me invisible, Elizabeth said, looking shocked. Are you rejecting the campaign that I'm running? Refusing to accept the theatrical apologies to Brenda, she said, opening the door. The lady, this is more significant than your brand, stood with a slightly open mouth, but Brenda had already returned to her apartment. Breathed. The sound was becoming louder, but it was also her voice, and she was not going to, allowing the world to turn it off. Brenda's exit from the lift. Everything felt different as you entered the rooftop lounge. The transaction had closed 2 hours earlier. Previously, Globe Strategies was now formally allied with one of the strongest global consulting firms in the industry, where the agreement was signed. Inc. with the name of Brenda Gregory at the top, not buried beneath diversity on page 16. She took the initiative, and now she stood on the rim of the skyline of New York, gazing at a city that has been there for years, persuaded her to be less than. Amazingly, the gathering was casual, only a private event planned by, despite wearing pants and a fitted jacket, she exuded confidence and sort that was not available for purchase or loan. It originated from every no, and she became a yes. She had pushed each locked door. She hurried over and opened it with her own hands. She virtually bounced in her shoes at first. We did it, but you did it most of the time. The sound of you laughing, Brenda, was warm and sincere. For the first time in a long time, we accomplished it, and you deserve a drink for securing the floor as a whole. Na smiled in the morning and was already working on behind her. Rachel seemed to be still. You have strong, proud, buttoned eyes. Didn't contact me following that publicity stunt with Brenda. From the airline grinned because the tie read that you told me to go to the burnt soil. Rachel gave a shrug. Because they were deserving, but you managed things more skillfully than I would have saw the live broadcast of you and Hafthi. Apparently, the video has already crossed the nation. By that afternoon, the media had 2 million views. Outlets requested an interview panel. Sterling, Air had poured invites, released a fresh statement in public this time. Not only about Brenda but also about adjustments to company-wide policies. They'd promised to do a thorough audit of their client. A new equity was promised by servicetraining.council and even put the worker on leave. Accountable for the ongoing situation inquiry, but none of it was important. To Brenda as much as the correspondence from black ladies, young girls, and strangers who complimented her after seeing herself in her for carrying out their actions. Too tired, too scared, or too many. She proceeded to the bar and chose filling a glass with sparkling water. And to remain silent, she silently toasted, being here to support you no matter what, down to constantly purchasing the fucking seat and maintaining a familiar distance across the room. Voice yelled, "You're difficult to locate." While your Brendan developed Evan Tran into a successful stood close to the entrance, clearly unsure, holding a little package in her hands. Brenda was shocked when you arrived, but not. I was hoping to see you, but unkind. Evan nodded, not in a work-related role. Brenda, you won't attempt to eye the package. Give me another coupon, please. Are you Iban? Flushed, no, this is private. Moved ahead and set the box down. Brenda opened lightly on a neighboring table. It gradually revealed a little sculpture inside. Glass figures are lovely and abstract. The form of flowing lines that are, frozen in motion in a way both grounded and reaching. Evan responded, "Upward. My sister made it." Gently, the black artist has been making an effort. For years, she worked to get her work noticed, saw your video and gave me a call. Tears informed me that she felt heard and that questioned me. How did you handle it? Something changed with Brenda's look in, her chest somewhat split open. I couldn't respond to her at all. So this isn't from Sterling. To continue, this is from me, Air. I appreciate you. Not. Brenda closed the door, allowing us to look aside. Box gave a single nod and spoke the sole item. Telling her that it reached me was important. They didn't have to say goodbye. Brenda remained at the window in silence. Beside her, the glass figure rested. Nana reappeared with her phone in her hand. You're popular once more, but this time it's your quotation from the flight, not the after the arrangement that Brenda brought up. Press Q&A and eyebrow. That's the one between. The masked what guidance you would provide young people. Brenda, a black woman in business, grinned. Keeping in mind the situation, don't request the don't wait for a seat. Get one now. Keep it and give someone else room. In the meanwhile, she hadn't planned. The words that they had just spoken were. She leaned on the fence and read headlines. I gazed at the wind in the city below, swept softly beneath her horns over her. Face pointed to a location where people were hurrying to. C-trains first clinking glasses. Arguments between dates regarding nothing. Life kept relocating. But at this point, Brenda allowed herself felt as though she could still recall the little girl who sat inside her, looking through the kitchen of My Mother periodicals and wondering why nobody is in. She appeared in those pages. Recalled being informed at the age of 16 that she was too straightforward, and she always recalled She was instructed to loosen up and grin more. Thankful. And then she recalled the chill of that first-class flight cabin, the quiet of those who were aware. It was incorrect. And the glance said nothing. On that man's face. As he got to his feet, how much of it cost her and cost him nothing. Everything, but she also recalled, advocating not only for herself, but also for all the incarnations of her that have ever existed, instructed to take a seat. She turned back to the lounge in the direction of her colleagues, and the Rachel was speaking with future Nay, giggling about something that someone turned few other employees from the A partner company had shown up with an offer. Toasts with champagne and shy smiles. Brenda picked up her glass once more. This time, it wasn't. The story's conclusion is never truly ends, not for those who are similar to her, but for, she gave herself the rarest thing tonight. Prize of all, a happy moment that didn't request that she diminish, and an empty seat at the top. Not convention, not coercion, not impression may take from her once more.